Good afternoon, my friends. So in 2007, we started a program called Search Inside Yourself. And as we were looking around the room, we decided we need somebody very special. I said, okay, to create this class or to bring this class to the next level, let's look for a business leader, an executive. Let's look for somebody with 10,000 hours of meditation training and is a respected meditation teacher and has experience running a business, a successful business, preferably a CEO, preferably a founding CEO, and preferably is a thought leader, preferably an author of business books, and has an MBA, and willing to work with us. So, does this person even exist in the world? Right? And we were very fortunate that we found him, Marc, today's guest, and he was right there because we already started working with him as a coach at the time, and it was like, this is it. He's the guy we've been looking for. So we're very lucky to have him, Marc, and Marc is here to talk about his book. Oh, I forgot to this book, his third book, and in my opinion, his best book yet. And this is a book about paradoxes, except it is not, paradoxically. And it's about paradoxes leading you to a happier, more successful life. And with that, my friend, Marc Lesser.
Thank you and welcome. Someone just asked me, what's the meaning, or where did I come up with the title of this book, Know Yourself, Forget Yourself? And I had to admit that I stole the title from the words of a 13th century Zen teacher named Dogen. Actually, Dogen was the founder of Zen in Japan, and a very prolific, very wonderful teacher. And one of his most known expressions, in fact, it's so well known that I once published it as a greeting card in one of my, I used to run a publishing company that made greeting cards. And this quote by Dogen says, to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to awaken or to become enlightened with everything and everyone. And I first heard that expression probably about 40 years ago. And that's been, I've been mulling that expression for much of my life, right? What does it mean? What does it mean to study yourself? What does it mean to know yourself? What does it mean? And how does that lead to self-knowing? And how does that lead to becoming someone who can be truly effective, influential, and powerful in the world? I just want to start with a Zen story, one of my favorite Zen stories, which is about a funeral. This is a story about these two Zen teachers who decide to go to they're going to a funeral, and they get there early, and they notice that no one else is there, and they see a coffin that has the body of this deceased friend of theirs. And you never know what to expect when you get these Zen guys together. So these two Zen teachers go right up to the coffin. And one of them wraps his hand on the coffin, knocks on the coffin. I mean, imagine if this were, you were one of these people. And he looks at the other teacher and says, alive or dead? Alive or dead? And the other teacher, without hesitating, looks at him and says, I won't say. I won't say. So this is a story about the things we take for granted, about what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be a fully alive human being? And what is this thing that we call life and death? And that it's a paradox. Everything about being a human being, I think when we stop to look a little bit more carefully and more closely, is a paradox. Right? So breathing in and breathing out. So I sometimes in my when I'm teaching meditation, and maybe we can all practice this a little bit, even while we're right here. So breathing in is a kind of self-knowing. Breathing in, kind of know some sense. What's happening? What's happening with you right now? What are you feeling? Who are you? What do you think it means to be you? And as you breathe out, letting it go, like just forgetting it all, completely refreshing yourself, that you can actually use the breath and do this with every breath. So self-knowing and self-forgetting. Self-knowing, self-forgetting. You know, as I was writing this book came as somewhat of a surprise to me. My last book was called Less, Accomplishing More by Doing Less, and I signed a contract to write another book, and the contract I signed was to write a book called More, right? Obviously, because I felt like a lot of people liked Less, but there were, every once in a while I'd meet CEOs of companies who would say, I really love this book, Less. You've done such a great job, but I'm not giving it to any of my employees because I don't want them doing less. And I realized he totally didn't get it. That it's not about, less isn't about doing less. Less is about getting more done by being more effective, more present. And that was the beginning of thinking, I need to straighten this out. I need to write a book that is clear about, that it needs to be a book about more. So I signed this contract for a book called More, and I started down this road of writing a book called More. And what kept coming up for me was how paradoxical everything was. That everything about my life, when I looked at my life as a business person, as someone who was working in the world as an executive coach, as a CEO, as someone who was working with business people, and at the same time, I'm also a Zen teacher. And I thought, just that, how paradoxical is that? Just my own definitions of myself. But all of the work, when I felt like I'd be in front of a CEO of a company, what kept coming up for me was working in the realm of paradox. How do you actually practice with things like confidence and questioning? How do you actually work with things like fighting for change and accepting what is? And I noticed even just those two themes, being confident and questioning everything, fighting for change and accepting what is. Those two paradoxes I've noticed were mainstays of my coaching practice, as well as my Zen teaching practice. And then there was this emotional paradox about, over and over again, as I work in the realm of teaching people about emotional intelligence, it became clear that the idea wasn't about tamping down one's emotions. In fact, the practice is about becoming completely free in your own emotional life and learning to trust your emotions and be a completely emotional being. And at the same time, to find a sense of equanimity. So this became another core paradox, was embrace emotion and embody equanimity. And then this other paradox kept coming up about, wait a minute, do we take care of ourselves? Like, how do we take care of ourselves? What does real well-being practice mean? What does it mean to eat well and exercise and really take good care of ourselves? And at the same time, I thought that our lives were supposed to be about benefiting others. So this became another one of these core paradoxes, the paradox of benefit others and benefit yourself. Yeah. So one morning, as this book, as this book was starting to take shape, I remember one morning in particular, I was getting up at about 3 or 3:30 a.m. to write, because at one point, it just really grabbed me, this subject about paradox and how to bring paradox into the world, and how important it is to actually identify, embrace, and practice with paradox. So this book is about the importance and practices for how to not only not push away paradox, but how to embody it and embrace it, and how to practice with paradox. That the practice of paradox, I think, might be one of the most important and core practices for human beings. And one morning, as I sat down to write, I noticed that I started to feel agitated and almost angry. And I found myself writing, I don't want this book to be about paradox. I don't like paradox. I want this book to be about clarity. And I want to read you, this is partly what I started to write that morning. Personally speaking, I'm not happy or satisfied with the idea of paradox. I don't really want this book to be about paradox. I want this book to be about clarity. Who wants paradoxical relationships or paradox in business? We all want confidence and assurance. Imagine a stockbroker or surgeon or soldier using the word paradox to describe his or her work. Paradox seems to be the opposite of clarity, the opposite of action, a non-answer, perhaps a shrug. In my work life and personal life, I've come to realize that embracing what is obvious is not always so easy. Meanwhile, paradox can point to a radical clarity. My hope is that this book will help you see that with paradox comes a kind of clarity that is more accurate, more true, more clear than clear. Actually, as I was writing this, that line really surprised me. That with paradox comes a kind of clarity that is more accurate, more true, more clear than what we usually accept at face value. Life and death are a paradox. In our day-to-day lives, we're constantly torn between opposites and duality, between competing desires and needs. There is no escaping the paradoxical nature of the world. If we accept this and meet paradox head-on, if we work with and penetrate these apparently unsolvable conundrums, the place we reach is insight. I was remembering when I was a young Zen student. Just a brief part about my own story is I took a 1-year leave of absence from Rutgers when I was a psychology student there, and came out to the West Coast and then spent 10 years living at the San Francisco Zen Center. So that 1 year turned into 10 years. And as you might imagine, and I can see it now that I'm a parent, that this wasn't really what my parents had in mind for me. And in particular, I think my father was quite upset with me for having dropped out of college and spent all these years living at the San Francisco Zen Center. I think it was right in the midst of that, maybe my 4th or 5th year at the Zen Center, I got a call one day from my mother saying that my father was quite ill, that my father had cancer and was in the hospital. And I immediately, at this time I was living at Zen Center's Green Gulch Farm in Marin, and I stopped doing the work that I was doing, which was working with horses, learning how to farm with horses. And I got on a plane and flew to New Jersey, where I grew up. And I discovered that my father was quite ill, that he had been highly, highly drugged and was so confused at night that they had to tie him down in order for him not to be wandering around the hospital. And I discovered that no one had let him know at all what was happening and that he was completely confused. And fortunately, I had some really, really amazing resources and support system at the Zen Center, so that when I arrived at the hospital, my support system, a group of older women mentors, Zen teachers, they told me that it just looked like the doctors were in charge, that actually I was in charge, and that I could take control of this situation. I could have them stop giving my father drugs. I could untie him, and I could actually have a real conversation and let my father know just what was happening with him. And I was so grateful and moved that I had that kind of support system and was able to do that. And so I was 26 at the time, and I can remember after taking my father off drugs, untying him, and having a conversation in which I let him know that he was quite ill, and in fact he might be. The doctors thought that he didn't have very long to live, that he was dying of cancer, and at the same time that one never knows actually what will happen, and I wanted to keep some hope alive. And my father looked at me and said that he had been so angry with my choices, but he had no idea what I was doing at the Zen Center. But whatever it was I was doing, he was really, really happy and proud of me, and that I was able to meet my father in the most intimate and powerful way that I had in my entire life. And this was a huge. I had no idea that I had changed or that I was any different than I was, but it was so amazing and powerful to see through my father's eyes the changes that I had made in myself. And I feel like this is in a way at the heart of knowing yourself and forgetting yourself, practicing over and over again this self-knowledge and self-forgetting. I'm sitting here looking at my good friend Meng, who was the inspiration for the Search Inside Yourself program here at Google. And I was just remembering, Meng and I taught together many, many times, and I've taught with other people as well, the Search Inside Yourself program. And one day I was driving down to Google. We were about to teach a day of mindfulness together. And I noticed as I was driving, I was feeling more and more anxiety. I was remembering that everyone at Google who was in the class was going to rate me on a scale of 1 to 5 about how my performance was. And I noticed every time I got these ratings, my eye would go, I would actually say, who gave me a 1, or how many 1s or 2s did I get? And it didn't even seem to matter if I got mostly, 5s, that I couldn't help but notice how much effect it had on me, those negative assessments. And as I was driving down, I noticed myself feeling more and more upset and anxious and not wanting to be there. And I happened to, I looked next to me and I had some CDs, and I had a CD by the poet, this wonderful poet, who I'm sure many of you know. If you don't, you should, David Whyte. I put in a CD by the poet David Whyte, and he was talking about the importance of embracing paradox and the importance of finding your own edge and trusting yourself no matter what might be happening in your life. And at some point I said to myself, I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to completely show up for that class. I don't care how they grade me. It doesn't matter. And I walked in to that room, and Meg and I started teaching that class together. And I think it was like at the break in the morning, Meng turned to me and said, "What happened to you?" That there was a way that I felt really freed. And I think part of my own freedom was recognizing that I felt my own feeling of being an imposter. And I think the more and more we put ourselves out there, the more successful we are, the more we're able to do what we actually want to do. I think it's more and more important that we recognize that we all have some version of that anxiety and doubt, and maybe even feeling like a complete imposter. And I think this is part of this paradox of be confident, question everything. And I think the more we can question, the more we can go deeper and deeper to find ourselves. And the more that we can go deeper and deeper, the more confident we feel. And at the same time, the more and more confident we feel, invariably, over and over again, more and more questions arise about what really is our motivation. That we're all, so much of our human lives and our human life is about relationship. And relationship seems to be about conflict and paradox. That we even feel, so much so that we even feel conflict within ourselves. Do we accept what is, or do we fight for change? And the answer to that is yes. We do. We have to completely practice accepting what is, and at the same time, we need to practice fighting for change. And I like to call, and actually this was an idea that I got from reading some books by Peter Senge, in which he talks about creative tension and the importance of being able to stay with and embrace creative tension. And I think I didn't like so much calling it tension, so I call it in my book creative gaps. And a creative gap is identifying and recognizing where you are now and where you want to be. And this can be with a particular project. So like with, all of you, I'm sure, have, maybe tens or 50 or hundreds of creative gaps in your life. What are the projects? What are the things that you're working on in which, if you look, where are you now and where do you want to be in that project? We also have big life creative gaps. Where are you in your life right now and where do you want to be? We have these emotional creative gaps. In what way? What are some particular, maybe we want to cultivate more joy. Maybe we want to cultivate more kindness. Maybe we want to cultivate more compassion in our lives. So just starting with accepting where you are now, how much joy, how much kindness, how much compassion is there in your life right now? And where do you want to be? And what do you need to do to actually get there? So this is an example of accepting what is and fighting for change at the same time. I think I want to try something. I want to get you all talking a little bit about describing yourselves a bit as a paradox. And I want to do this in two ways. One is I'm going to ask you to think about how you might be a paradox, and I also want to ask people to take a little bit of a risk here And the image that I have is that we're all like icebergs, right? If each person is like an iceberg, and we have there's the water line, and usually there's an awful lot for us going on beneath the surface. Beneath the surface of the water is where the real stuff is happening in us. So like right now, beneath the waterline for me is I'm excited and I'm nervous. I see like if one person just got up to leave and I'm like, oh my God, he doesn't like what I'm so there's that, and just I'm kind of wondering in myself, how's it going? What do I want to do? How is this all being received? And at the same time, I feel the paradoxes in myself. I feel my own confidence, my own questioning, my sense of that there's all the time in the world right now. I feel spacious, and I feel like, oh my God, it's almost 1:30. There's 3 minutes left. So these are just some things that are coming up for me right now. So what I want everyone to do, if you're willing to go along, I hope you'll be willing to go along. Stay with me for a few more minutes. To find a partner and just have a brief conversation with your partner about these two topics. One, what's happening for you right now below the surface, beneath the waterline? What feelings, what thoughts, what images are coming up for you right now? And the other is just say a few words that might describe you as a paradox. In what way? Talk about a few things in your own life and your own being that come up for you right now as paradoxical. Okay? So just turn to the person next to you, if there's someone next to you. If there's not, feel free to stand up. And just for a few minutes, have this conversation with your partner. So if you can finish up, thank your partner, and come on back. I just want to read one thing, and then I'm interested to hear how that was and if there's any questions. It seems at times as though we have no choice but to act as though the world is permanent, solid, and predictable. And at the same time, we must realize that everything around us is impermanent, fluid, and unpredictable. If we go too far toward believing in permanence, we'll be thrown when something unexpected happens. If we lean too far toward a belief in impermanence, we may fall into the trap of not setting clear goals, not achieving what is within our potential, and living irresponsibly. This can be a way of trying to protect ourselves from failure, or sometimes of trying to protect ourselves from success. The secret of successful business practice and life practice is finding the balance between control and letting go. It's understanding that though little is within our control, we must act with complete responsibility. In one of his talks, Shunryu Suzuki, who's the founder of the San Francisco Zen Center, said, "The secret is just to say yes and jump off from here. Then there is no problem. It means to be yourself in the present moment, always yourself, without sticking to an old self. You forget yourself and are refreshed." This short, pithy, 4-line story points to the dilemma that we all have, that we all face, all experience. How do we balance all of these seemingly impossible demands and priorities? How can I be happy, feel safe, be satisfied, provide for myself and family, and help others? What is this life? What does it mean to be an authentic human being in the realm of family, work, smartphones, relationships, love, hate, birth, and death. We're all perched on the top of a 100-foot pole. This is a famous Zen story. We're all perched on the top of a 100-foot pole. Together, it is a very wide pole. So wide, there's no place to fall off. Just say yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Are there any questions? Well, first of all, I'm interested. How was it having those conversations about looking beneath the surface and yourself as the paradox? And are there any questions or comments about anything?
So in talking about paradox and what's arising right now, one of the questions we talked about was, if, as they say, the heart of true practice is beyond words, then why do we all feel compelled to come here today and listen to you talk about it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is actually very close to, I started my talk by talking about Dogen. And it was said that one of the things that drove him over and over again to practice was the question, if we all inherently have Buddha nature, if we all are perfect just the way we are, why do we need to practice? And in some way, I think your question is the same question, right? If we all know that we don't need words and letters. We have a kind of amazing innate understanding already, innate intuition about it's all there. And we all need a lot of, a lot of practice. Again, it reminds me of this famous Suzuki Roshi quote, where this was something he said. I think this was at the during a long sitting where he looked out at his audience and said, "You're all perfect just as you are, and you can use a little improvement." So I think we come here together to both sit and feel our own perfection, and at the same time, these words help us to fill in these creative gaps. So I think there's that sense of perfection, and there's a sense of these creative gaps. And another place these creative gaps show up a lot, which I didn't say, is just in our day-to-day habits, our own habitual reactions to things, right? So a creative gap that I feel, and I think a lot of us feel, is wanting to feel more and more a sense of freedom, more and more sense of less self-consciousness. So in a way, this book, right? So know yourself. The forget yourself part has a few different elements to it. It has a compassion element to it, a listening to others element to it, a helping others. But I think at its heart, the other level of meaning it has is to be able to find a kind of freedom where we can be less and less self-conscious and more free and trusting of ourselves and of our life. That's why we need all these words, I think. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
I have a question. This is Nick on VC.
Yes.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Great talk, thank you. My question is, in terms of creative gaps, for those of us who really aren't sure kind of where we want to be, what are some good questions that we could ask ourselves to kind of better define that?
Great question. Well, I think this is one of the things that, in the program here, Search Inside Yourself, we do a lot of different explorations around that. One is, the third of the 5 emotional intelligence pieces is called motivation. So you can do a lot of different explorations around better understanding your own motivation. So we do an exercise around envisioning. We do something around alignment. So you can start with alignment is a great place to start. To be asking yourself and having conversations with others around things like, what really is important to you? What are your values? What matters? And in what way is what you're doing now and is your life now in alignment with those values, with those things that are important? Just digging down there through a city. In a way, meditation practice is about being so quiet and so still that your true motivation starts to arise. What's really important to you starts to come up. You start to pay attention to your feelings, to your voice, to your body. So it's mostly about all kinds of ways of paying more attention through alignment, through meditation practice, through journaling and asking yourself about. We do an envisioning exercise in which we envision if everything in your life went exactly as you want it to go, what would your life look like now in 3 years or in 5 years? This is another exercise. So those are just some ideas to that. But yeah, read Meng's book, Search Inside Yourself, and it has many answers to that. And my book also has many questions and answers around that topic. Thank you. Other questions or comments? I'm curious too. What was it like to describe yourself as a paradox, or to dip down beneath the surface? Did anyone feel some real connection and intimacy with this other person that was a little surprising, right here in the middle of a googly Monday? So your comment was you were surprised at the commonality of the way your partner described herself or himself as a paradox, and you always thought it was just you. Yeah, I've noticed, that whole. It's one of the really wonderful things about having real conversations with people. So that would be, on one of the things that I talk about in the book is recommending a personal audit. Actually, so it's one thing to say, start where you are, or accepting what is, but it's interesting actually to start with what actually is, and one of the there's what I think of as the things we all know, and maybe some of us do or don't do, which is things like getting enough sleep, exercise, eating good food. But I think the kind of food that I think may be one of the most important foods is our relationships, and the level of openness and intimacy in our relationships. So one of the things you might do in a personal audit is start to keep track of how many real conversations do you have with someone during the day. Just notice, and you can define a real conversation maybe as where you or someone else actually expressed some emotion, and there might have been some emotional connection with people. And just start to, maybe for a week, start to jot down at the end of each day, how many real conversations, how many intimate conversations did I have during the day? For some people, I think it's interesting. This is partly a gender thing. I think women tend to talk a lot more about their feelings and emotions, and men tend to talk a lot less about feelings and emotions. And it's just a generalization, which isn't 100% true. But wherever you are, man or woman, just notice where are you on that scale, and how might it be beneficial to shift that needle in terms of having the right amount of intimate, real conversations during your day.
In an environment like this in here, where a lot of people are, let's call it black and white. This is the right thing to do. This is the wrong thing to do. This is the right thing I have to do to climb the ladder. What do you recommend? What are the pieces we can contribute for people to embrace the gray area and the growth and the tension in our day-to-day interactions?
Yeah. Well, I think especially so in this kind of environment, and in a lot of business environments, we want things to be clear, right? We want clarity. We want that sense of ladder. And I think, we should spend as much time as it takes to get that clear. But I think to be successful, to really be successful and happy, both in this environment or pretty much any environment, it's about resilience and how we adapt. That, the business model here for, there's so much change right here. It's announced, Google Reader, gone. This might be a sore point, Yeah. I miss Google Reader, but I get it, right? Because in my own company, you have to make decisions, and not everyone's going to be. It's hard being a leader. It's hard being a manager. You see as clearly as you can, and then you know that there's a lot of things you don't know. Who knew, what would happen when you make an announcement about Google Reader? Who knew? Or who knew when Netflix announced, that they were changing their whole pricing scheme? And I think we're constantly, whether it's out there experimenting with products and services, and within our team, we're constantly, I think, trying to get more understanding of who are these other people on the team. How does, one of the things we teach in Search Inside Yourself is political awareness. How does power work? How does power and decision-making work in this organization? And it's often pretty complex and not so clear. So to be able to have a sense of clarity, and at the same time to be adaptive and resilient. And that also means being willing to look stupid, being willing to fail. Right? So I think, again, this is one of those paradoxes. The more we hold on, the more, so it's a little bit like, as I was describing my drive down here, I think it was if I look underneath, it was I wanted to be successful, right? I wanted to be the best presenter. I wanted to get all fives, I don't want anyone seeing that I'm not perfect, right? I think we all have those feelings, and I think those get in the way of our resilience and adaptiveness and being able to course in a much fuller, adaptive, resilient, free world. So thank you for asking that. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
So as you can see, Marc Lesser is a combination of profound Zen wisdom and getting things done in the business world. And for that, we are now in a way, we're partners now. We are partners in crime because Search Inside Yourself has been taken out with the blessing of Google. We founded an institute called the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, SIYLI, Silly. And Marc is the CEO of Silly, the Silly boss.
I get a big kick of saying, I'm the CEO of Silly, and my business partner is Google's jolly good fellow. What could be better than that?
What can possibly go wrong with that? Know Yourself, Forget Yourself, available where books are sold, and my dear friend Marc Lesser.